Put down there. Oh, Mike's muted.
Marie, you're there?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Josh is on, Rich is on, and I'm on, as well as Mike King. So we do have a quorum. So I'd like to call to order the November 17th, 2020 special meeting. Time is 6:30 p.m. Ask Marie Todd if she would lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States
of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Bridget, call the roll, please.
President Riley,
Yes.
Vice President King,
Here.
Commissioner Carlson,
Not here.
Commissioner Egan, Commissioner Janner,
Here.
Commissioner McBroom,
Here.
Commissioner Todd. Here.
Next item is matters from the public. Do we have anyone signed up to speak, Bridget?
We do not.
Okay, then we'll move on to discussion items. First item is 3.1, the 95th Street lease.
Yes, President Riley, earlier this fall, I shared with the board that the lease for the 95th Street Center was coming due at the end of this year. We currently are operating under a 3-year lease for that space at the facility with 2 one-year options to renew. At that time, we also discussed reducing the overall square footage that the Park District would lease at the property, reducing from the current 6 classrooms and registration office to 3 classrooms, the 3 classrooms that are most heavily utilized by Park District programs. We have had discussions with the property manager, and the property manager is very open to working with the Park District and has actually offered to work within the Park District's budget for 2021 for the 3 classroom spaces and allow us to remain actually and continue programming 5 of the program spaces, the second floor classrooms, as well as the registration office at the budgeted amount for 2021. That would actually take our lease rate for next year from a little over $19 per square foot to just over $10 per square foot. So what we would like to do as staff is recommend to the board at the December meeting a 1-year amendment to the 95th Street Center lease for those 5 classroom spaces as well as the registration office. We would not renew the lease for the culinary arts kitchen on the 3rd floor, as well as the WDS Ray Lecotech room, as WDS Ray is discontinuing that program. So we wanted to present that to the board this evening and then bring a formal amendment to the board in December.
Thank you. Brett, commissioners, are there any questions or comments on that? Okay, thank you, Brett. Next item is 3.2, independent contractors agreements for instruction.
Yes, that's also mine. Typical, each year we have a few contractors that provide programs for the district that have payments during the course of the year that exceed $25,000. Notably, those are Shotokan Karate, the all sports, youth sports programs that we provide, as well as Challenger Soccer for the Premier Soccer program has had payments of over $25,000 in the past. We intend to bring those contracts to the board in December for consideration for 2021 with the anticipated payments for next year. We would utilize a template independent contractor agreement developed with Dirk for that approval in December. So I wanted to present that to the board and prepare for the next meeting.
Thank you. Any questions or comments on that from the commissioners on that? Okay, then we move on to item 3.1, highlight of the evening, the 2021 budget presentation. All the commissioners were provided with the PowerPoint, and the PowerPoint slides are all numbered to help us in reference. So Sue, take it away.
Yep, and just before we get started, we are going to be sharing a screen with you, so hopefully we'll all be on the same page here. But if someone does lose connectivity with the visual, you should have the hard copy also that you can follow along with.
Thank you.
Okay. And I will let Ray take it from here.
Okay, this is certainly unique. I think this is the first time in all my years in public service I've ever done a budget presentation via Zoom. So, one for the record books. Sue, if you want to go ahead and just forward, and for the sake of time and that, I'm not going to read each and every one of these, but 20th, when the first lockdown took place, and certainly something that we're all going to remember, not only as a district but as a society, of the challenges that we've faced, not only personally but certainly professionally here at the Park District. And just as you look at the screen, these are certainly some of those challenges. However, with those challenges, and obviously today was another challenge. While we were notified today that the governor has reinstituted a stricter lockdown, the good news is the lockdown's not nearly as significant as the first one, but it is significant. But that being said, staff rose to the challenge to continue to provide services the best way we could for our community. I don't need to sit here and lecture anybody on the benefits of recreation and the mental health stresses that everybody on this Zoom and certainly anybody watching from home continues to go through. So we recognize that, we stepped up, and we delivered several different new options for people in our community to help us get through this, to help them get through this. I've been doing this a long time in public service, and I've said it before, I'll say it again. I am so proud of the staff here at the Naperville Park District and what they have done and what they continue to do for this community to help them maintain some semblance of mental acuity. Because God knows, if we've all talked to people, people are really fragile. They've been fragile all year. They're really fragile now. And so anything that we can do, and we've done for the serve, I couldn't be prouder. I always use my George Pradle terminology. I'm so proud. And George is certainly challenging through me tonight and talking and saying that I'm just really proud of the staff. Next. And here are some of the the mission, our mission in action for 2020. Some of the things that we've done. We'll certainly talk about the game of golf and some of the other things you see up on the screen here. But just a new way of delivering recreation is what we've embraced and what we've delivered. When some of the questions on, are we going to be able to finish all of these new amenities that we are smack dab in the middle of? And as you know, we did. all three of these, and specifically the most one with the Wolf's Crossing. If you haven't had a chance to get down there, take a drive down there. Just an unbelievable facility that's busy from the sun up till the sun down. Even with this weather and as cold as it's recently been, it's getting some great use. Certainly with our use of the e-learning, the Rocket League, these are some great amenities again that we brought to the community. Hopefully this time next year, we're not going to be talking about any of this. We're going to be talking about the recovery and the fact that life will get back to normal. But we're trying to bring normal as best we can to the people that we serve. Next. Again, just as you look at the pictures up here, different ways of doing different things here from, and I meant, the midday spray, and that came as I told the story, laying in bed at 3 o'clock in the morning, wide awake when we knew the beach was not opening. And what do we do to bring something to the community in the way of water that we can't bring? And I went back to my days when my father was a Chicago fireman, and turning on the fire hydrant for the kids in the neighborhood for half hour, 45 minutes. Okay, this is not a fire hydrant, but it was something. It was something to show the initiative the staff has, happiness, because there hasn't been a lot of that this year. Certainly trying to keep the music in the parks, celebrating the 4th of July, our most recent event with the Halloween Nights, and more information is coming on our Santa's workshop, which is certainly going to look different this year for sure. Next. Go ahead. Can you guys hear? Next slide.
Oh, okay. Do you see the goals and accomplishments slide?
Yep, I got it.
Okay.
And again, I just talked about these briefly here. The commissioners, you're obviously all aware of these. It's because of you that we are allowed to make this happen for the community. We certainly look forward to some greater things in 2021 when these facilities can hopefully be wide open and be used as well, with not being regulated by COVID shutdowns and restrictions. Next.
Okay, so this is Sue, and I'll start with just a quick overview of 2020, where we think we are going to be at our best estimate right now. We're projecting to $625,000 in reserves that will be to balance out the recreation fund. Overall, if you remember back in April, we came with a list of reductions that we had put together. We call it our COVID-19 budget. That was about a $4.1 million reduction. We plan on exceeding about projecting 7.6 million below on the expense side of both a combination of capital and operating expenses. Ongoing, up until just a little while ago, we are still getting requests that go to Ray and I to approve any expenditure over $1,000. So carefully are watching what's going on, and I apologize. Something's happening with the power. There we go. Sorry about that.
No, we had an entry, so we had to allow them in. So when we clicked back on the presentation, it forwarded the slide.
Okay, so we're back to the 2020 recap. Our fund balance reserves, even with the drawdown of the 625, we are still projecting that we are going to end the year with our board's approved fund balance policy for all of our major funds, actually all of our funds. We also had a significant event this year, and that was Moody's coming in and re-rating us our new issue, our refunding issue, that we had some really nice savings, over $400,000, and also reconfirmed AAA for all of our existing bonds, which is really important. So ending the year in a strong financial position in 2020, we're going to we think about that a lot here as we're doing everything of not just how do we get through tomorrow and next week, But, you know, how do we end this year so we can prepare for uncertainty, which can happen in the future, and then long strategic planning going along with that. Okay, so I'll be moving on if there aren't any questions to the 2021 budget. Okay, great. And I will let Ray jump in here again.
Ray, can you hear us? See if he's muted.
It shows that Ray is on, but he's muted.
My apologies. Again, you know, working to our mission and working for the health of the community. This is a graph that you've seen before, and I think it's one that really depicts what we as an organization strive to do and try to provide for the community. Go ahead, Sue.
Okay.
And then certainly with the goals for 2021, reopening the facilities district-wide, which includes obviously the beach, the cafe, all the things that were shut down this year. Wolf's Crossing Community Park official grand opening, strategic plan development, which we'll certainly be doing that internal with you as a board. And then going back for renewal of our commission for accreditation of park and recreation agencies through CAPRA. Some of the renovations for 2021, Brighton Ridge, Brush Hill, Commissioners, Frontier Sports Complex, Kings Hill Park, and Walnut Ridge will be some of the ones, and certainly these are the ones that were deferred from this year.
Getting into some of the numbers. So our 2021 consolidated budget, that's every fund that we have, both operating and capital, we have revenues of about 39 million. And expenditures of 41 million, and that includes about $8.9 million in capital, which we'll talk about a little later in the presentation. So when you look at those numbers, you'll see we have a planned drawdown of 2.2 million. As I've said in the past, when you say drawdown, sometimes that can be a negative connotation. It is not in this case. On that $2.2 million drawdown, we have approximately $2 million that is for capital projects, and that is part of our 10-year spending plan. So it often happens that we have revenues on hand ahead of time, and then in the year that we do the project, we might spend more than we take in that particular year. The remaining amounts that we will be drawing down and using are accumulated funds from 2020 due to COVID for three of our funds, FICA, IMRF, and liability. For FICA and IMRF, we have monies left over this year just because of COVID-19 and the reduction in all of our payroll costs. The payroll-related liability funds also mirror that reduction in spending. So we've had extra money roll through those funds. They are restricted, so we cannot use them for anything else. So in 2021, we planned on spending those funds that we have on hand. I will just make a note going back to our revenues. You know, in a typical year, as you know from committee overviews and reviews, that we are still anticipating COVID impacts for 2021. In a typical year, our property taxes, as we've said before, for the district represent about 50% or so of funding. So very, very important. It's our largest funding and revenue source that we rely on to do everything we do here. In 2021, that percentage is estimated to be at 60% of our total piece of the funding pie, because we are anticipating a lower amount in charges for services. So while a lot can change, we are seeing a little bit different, and hopefully when we get to 2022, we get back on track to a normal year. So I'll jump right into talking about our largest funding source that is so important to us. As we had mentioned before at our last meeting, we are planning for the 2020 year to hold our property tax levy request flat to what we had asked for last year, or what was extended to us last year. So what would that mean when we say adding flat? It means we are going to be an average taxpayer who is about $371 to the district this year should remain at that amount or even below that amount if their home values do not change. So, you know, it is providing a 1-year relief, as we had talked about, and also allows for flexibility in future years for future boards to keep that extension base high, to keep the new growth that we're going to experience this year in that extension base going forward. It's a 2-step process, as we had talked about. We would be approving in December our tax levy as we normally do, and in February we'll be bringing an abatement ordinance to the board to abate the debt service line item at that time and to hold our levy as flat as we can when the county extends it to what we asked for last year. What does that mean for us? All things said, at the end, we'd be drawing down using about $540,000 in capital reserves in order to balance the rec fund and keep it at our board policy reserve levels. Okay, so now we're drilling down a little bit more. We talked about the consolidated budget. Now we're looking at our 2021 operating budget. So this budget does not include capital expenditures or our debt service fund. So this is all of our other operating funds, revenues of about 28 million, 28.5, and expenditures of 28.9. You'll see again that we're spending a little more than we have. And again, that is the drawdown of the funds, FICA, iron, ref, and liability to get those balances down in those funds. So that is not negative. It's just the impacts of what happened to us in 2021. So now, just to give a sense, and when we talked about putting this together and how we look at just the oddness of this year, which, you know, is so off the charts, we're going to compare our 2021 operating budget to our 2020 budget, not 2020 projections, to try and give you a sense, and also for us to, when we looked at it, to get our hands around really how different things still are for 2021 compared to what a normal year would be for us. Revenues are planned to come in $2.2 million below our 2020 budget, and that is based on COVID-19 and reductions in charges for services. Expenses also $2 million below what we had anticipated, what we budgeted for in 2020. One thing, a challenge offsetting this is that 2020, we really didn't plan for a full year of expenses for maintenance for Wolf's Crossing or 95th Street. So we have programmed in a year's worth of maintenance in our expenses. Even with that, we still have a $2 million decrease. And we'll go through a little bit of what those items are. Of course, the biggest piece of our operating budget, as usual, are wages and benefits. It represents 55% of our operating budget and totals $16.2 million. And when we say wages and benefits, what that means is full and part-time wages, insurance, payroll taxes, pension costs, training, and some uniforms. So those categories fall within it. So drilling down a little bit more, wages and benefits compared to the 2020 budget, we're planning a decrease of $820,000 or a 4.8% decrease. So we have some moving pieces. What part of the increases are, we are planning a 2.3% COLA adjustment for all regular full-time employees and a 0.2% market adjustment if needed. And those happen sometimes where there's a one-off position that we find either falls out of a range. We have a little bit, couple $1,000s set aside for that. We are not anticipating or not programmed in any merit increases for 2021. And that represents, the cost of that is about $163,000. Also, yes,
What's P-TEL for this year?
I'm
For
sorry,
21?
2.3,
P-TEL's 2.3?
yes.
Thank you.
Okay, for golf, we also have had, when we're looking at the wage budgets, the moving part is we've had to increase our wages compared to 2020 for the golf budget. And that is directly related to minimum wage, which again, when we talk about all of the challenges, we have a challenge of going from $10 to $11 for golf. And Kevin will talk about this later. Golf has a lot of folks that were at minimum wage. I mean, a lot for all our departments. So that had an increase from their 2020 budget. And also we're very lucky in that at least golf operations is very similar to a normal year, even better for us. And then the other piece of that is the custodial department. And we talked to you about this earlier, where we had to add in a couple of part-time positions this year actually to take care of our new e-learning program and all of the cleaning and sanitation that is required there. And the other piece is we're going to save money on this ultimately, is we are bringing in-house the cleaning of our two golf clubhouses and restrooms. In the past, those have been outsourced. So the additional staff will take that on too. And as Brad had mentioned, when we talked about these positions, when e-learning is done and we get through COVID and we do not need the new resources we put into custodial, we work on not filling vacant positions in that department if needed, and would phase out one of those. So those are the two decreases, what we have. In our part-time labor, we have a $700,000 decrease compared to the 2020 budget, and a lot of that is directly related to a reduction in recreation and the participation there, where it's hand in hand, not one-to-one, but we'll see a reduction. Directly related to eliminated or restructured positions compared to the 2020 budget, we have 166,000, and we have a couple positions, one in marketing that we completely eliminated, and we had a whole restructure of the trades and planning departments that eliminated almost a full-time position as we moved those in, and definitely a benefit position for that year. We had three main retirements that triggered a whole domino effect of positions moving, people moving up, and that saved us $46,000 from the 2020 budget. In parks, and Tim will talk about this, we had initially anticipated 2 full-time positions in the 2020 budget, of which to help with Wolves Crossing and also 95th Street. And we did hire one of those positions on, and the one that was supposed to come on in July of this year, we deferred even bringing that person on or advertising for that. We have also deferred that in the 2021 budget. So there's a half a year savings there. We took out about 40 grand in training and uniforms, and FICA and I are up about 85,000 because of the lower wages. And our insurance, as we talked about, we are really happy to report that we did not have any kind of increase for our medical insurance, and our dental went down 7.75%. So we are $52,000 less on the insurance side. Phew, that's a lot. Ready to move on? Okay, supplies. Overall in our supply category, we're planning a $235,000 decrease. Of that, 157 is related to program and facilities. And our fuel budget, based on where we are and what we're used, we're anticipating a $44,000 decrease there. And there's also all kinds of smaller accounts that obviously we're not going to list them all, but when you go through our detailed line items, a lot of the supplies in the park divisions and also in rec, actually everyone really worked hard to get those down to as what we think as low as we might need. So there's a whole bunch of small accounts that also help add up to that $235,000 decrease. Contractual services, Brad had just talked about for the lease at 95th Street. That's a reduction in lease costs of $130,000. The program guide, obviously with all the moving parts, we're still keeping that digital. That's about a $242,000 decrease. And then legal fees also, Ansel Link has reduced our retainage down to what it used to be prior to a couple of years ago. We're through some tax objections and other things, so that retainage dropped. So there's a $12,000 savings there also. Okay, so now drilling down just a little bit further, we're done with the main operating budget and we're talking on a fund level, which is how we monitor a lot of things here. We'll look at the general fund operating budget. We are planning to break even in that fund, which is always a good thing. Overall, we have a 2.8% increase or $200,000 compared to the 2020 budget. The reason for that increase is twofold. Number one, there's a small increase in utilities, about $7,000, and that's just programmed for potential rate increases. And the other amount, the main $200,000, is just an increase in the transfer to the rec fund to break even. So in all our main accounts, wages and benefits, supplies, contractual services, we all have decreases in the general fund compared to the 2020 budget. This general fund is funded 96% through property taxes. So looking at fund balance and where we think we're going to be and where we are, as I mentioned earlier, we hope, if you look at the projected 2020, to end at a 6-month reserve, which is our board policy of $3.8 million, and we are projecting to stay at the $3.8 million again for 2021. Even with the drawdowns that we've had to do over the past year. As far as just some highlights of what's going on, Ray mentioned cap run strategic plan, the board's budget, which I will mention because we do have a requirement also to highlight this and talk about it as far as any kind of board travel, which we really don't anticipate anything happening in 2021, but we do have $3,300 that we set aside in the training budget for any virtual training that may come up, either one-offs. I think IPRA already is saying they're virtual, and with potential new board members, they do have some new training. So we allocate a little bit there. It's significantly less than we've ever done in the past. There are still IAPD dues included, and the annual support for board docs is housed within the board's budget. So overall, there was a 34% or $21,000 reduction from the 2020 budget. Yes.
I'm not sure if you have to come back to this question, but the IAPD dues I forgot the executive director's name over there. Is he still making like $400,000 or $500,000 a year? Do you know?
I do not know. I know the same director is there, so, but I don't know at this point what that is.
So I'd submit to the board that we should, like we did several years ago when his salary made news, we opted out of the IAPD, and I voted no to the budget the last couple of years because of it. There's no reason for us to be funding a salary that high for a manager of metadata or a manager of park districts. So where I sit, that's something that we could take those dollars and put towards people in need who can't afford our programs in our community today. But we can pick that up and maybe in conversation. Mike, I defer to you on that.
Let's continue on with the presentation.
Okay, hi, this is Katie, in case you can't see me. I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the highlights of the Human Resources Department. Recruiting in 2021, we expect to look different compared to 2019. 2020 is just a good comparison. It's our expectation that as programs expand, have more participants, and as operations increase, that we will have a need to hire many more new hires than we have in years past. Staff have likely that are in seasonal positions have likely moved on to whether it's just a natural progression in their college career, moving on to an actual career, or found something in the meantime and will be returning to us for the 21 season. We also expect that we're not going to have the opportunity to get into schools and do in-person recruiting. So we'll have to change up some things there in order to get our opportunities in front of individuals that are qualified and interested in those positions. We also will not be doing a joint job fair with Kids Matter in January of 21 like we have done in the past couple of years because of COVID. What we're going to look to do potentially for our own staff and our own hiring needs is utilize other platforms to do maybe some mini job fairs that would be all virtual. In 21, we're also going to be collaborating with our customer service division on a new platform to do surveying and create e-forms. My team is actually very excited about this because there's a lot of forms that we can put into this new platform that will result in some efficiencies, such as our payroll notification form. And then COVID, we expect we're going to be dealing with COVID in 21, and we've had to be very nimble, which actually is my last bullet point there. But I want to give you a little bit of an overview of where we're at currently as far as resources dedicated to COVID-19. Internally, we formed a COVID response team that includes me, Director Brad Wilson, Becky Cooper is our safety manager, Lisette, who is our HR administrator, Andrea Coates, our superintendent of recreation programs, and then Jackie Gonzalez, who's our aquatics manager. It being COVID, has altered the duties of many of our full-time staff, especially us 6. And I'm going to give you an idea of the impact to present to you a simplistic sequencing of the steps that follow notification that a patron has tested positive for COVID-19. We get that notification, and one of our team members gathers critical timeline dates that the symptoms began, the date the individual was tested, the date they were last at a class, facility, or a program. Then we review with that individual who they came into contact with 2 days prior to either the onset of their symptoms or if they were asymptomatic when they received their positive COVID-19 test. Close contact is anyone that has been in close proximity, being 6 feet or closer, for a total of 15 minutes. And it's not a 15-minute chunk of time. It's you're together for 1-minute increments where you together 15 or greater times. For close contacts and the positive individuals, we determine their quarantine timeline and call them directly and follow up then with a letter. For low exposure individuals, these are typically people that are in the facility. They also receive a low notification letter. The mean contact with the affected individual is monitored for their health status. We are doing constant check-ins with them to see if anything has changed. We instruct the quarantine individuals not to contact the district, if any of their household members start exhibiting symptoms of COVID-19 as well. Third-party notifications occur. We have to let our independent contractors know. We need to let people like WDSRA and Meals on Wheels know that we have an individual that has tested positive. And then, if applicable, refunds need to be processed. In the event that an employee has to quarantine as a result of being in close contact or is exhibiting symptoms and is waiting on test results, or they have tested positive, instead of refunds, we're assessing their paid sick leave rights under the Families First Coronavirus Response Act and then paying them for their time missed. I'm going to turn it over to Brad to talk a little bit about some of the impact related to our program participants.
Yeah, as Katie mentioned, one of the significant tasks in determining if a close contact occurred among facility patrons or program participants in order to communicate appropriate notifications to others is that time that it takes to, staff time it takes to make those contacts and to complete that investigation. When the district is made aware of a patron or a participant who tests positive or begins displaying symptoms, staff begins the process of contacting the family of the individual to understand the timeline and to determine if any close contacts occurred. Individuals deemed close contact are notified by the district immediately and asked to quarantine, as Katie mentioned. Others who may have participated in the program but did not have close contact still receive notification, and that's most oftentimes in the form of a low exposure notification. That does not require them to quarantine, but it does make them aware that someone that may have been in the facility or in the program was tested positive or had symptoms. Depending upon the situation, multiple classes may be affected. For instance, if an instructor who teaches multiple classes must quarantine all of the classes, taught by the instructor may need to be suspended if substitute instructors are not available. In some cases, and we've seen this most recently, especially within our youth sports programs, coaches have taken it upon themselves to communicate with their team and cancel practices upon hearing of a potential exposure of a team member or of a team member's parent. The district has asked the coaches to inform the park district representative first so that we can investigate and determine if those notifications are needed. Oftentimes the exposure has not occurred. However, when these situations happen, the district will investigate and issue the appropriate follow-up with teams, which may be a notice that no exposure occurred, that the practice could have met, or that there was low exposure. Each situation oftentimes results in the need for multiple phone calls and emails to be made to gather information and then to communicate appropriately.
So if your head isn't spinning yet, strap in. Another significant task is determining if employees are a close contact outside of work. Staff are being conscientious of others, but largely don't understand what a close contact truly is. So I'd like to take you through an example of a recent scenario that Becky Cooper, our safety manager, sorted through on November 9th. On Monday, November 2nd, our employee visited their fiance's mom with their fiance. While they were there, the mother's neighbor and the neighbor's boyfriend were also there. Our employees said they were in close contact, so within 6 feet for longer than 15 minutes with these people. However, none of these people have tested positive for COVID-19. The neighbor's boyfriend's sister tested positive, and it turns out that the boyfriend saw his sister the day before he saw our employee. That makes the mom's neighbor's boyfriend a close contact. It does not make anyone else there a close contact, as no one else was exposed to the boyfriend's sister. So this 6 different people, it was almost like we had to draw it out. But this is not uncommon, where we're sorting through what a close contact is with our employees to ensure that they're not coming into work and potentially affecting other individuals. So as we move forward into 2021, we expect things are going to continue to change, guidance is going to continue to change, and we're going to continue to remain nimble. And we also expect that as things progress, we're going to need to involve others to help through these situations. You know, we're looking toward and forward to Centennial Beach opening next year. So Jackie's going to need to pull back at some point in time and really focus on that operation. Yet we need at least this amount of resources to throw at this issue so that we can make sure that we're communicating appropriately and timely with our patrons and staff.
Okay, so we move on to IT. The largest thing that I will note for 2021 is that we will have our 3rd penetration test and security audit. As some of you may be aware, this testing and audit usually ends up in further mitigation either on some of our systems or some of our practices that we do here at the district. In the past, that one of those results led to a big overhaul of our email system to make it more secure, as it was our, at that point, #1 flaw, I would say. And then other than that, we have your standard virtual environment upgrades, server and PC replacements, and copier replacements.
Steve, are you there?
All right, now can you hear me? Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. So I was lucky enough to walk into this new position at the height of the first round of this.
Yeah.
So found ourselves trying to maintain our daily contacts with the people in the parks which were open but had amenities that were closed, including the playgrounds, the basketball courts, some of the synthetic fields. Eventually, we got back to kind of close to normal in that we were able to open up the playgrounds and some of the amenities within the parks. So we got back on our bikes, ATVs, foot patrols, and now we're going to see what the next week brings us. In terms of what we have on tap for this fall, beginning December 1st, we're going to work with PADERMA and ILEAP, the Illinois Law Enforcement Accreditation Program, to see if we can't get this organization certified going forward as we move into next year.
So this slide deals with 2021 goals and the key renovations, as Ray mentioned. There was several playgrounds that we deferred from 2020 into 2021 planned for next year, as well as there's play equipment at Commissioners Park and Kings Hill Park that needs to be replaced in 2021. Just to point out, per our capital policy, during the first quarter of this year, we met with the Parks and Rec Committee and we identified key capital improvement projects to be included within the 2021 capital budget. This summer, we conducted an extensive community outreach process with the 2021 capital projects open house, which was online. We received a tremendous amount of feedback, which assisted us in developing project plans and budgets, which were included in the 21 capital budget, part of the budget book that we're discussing tonight. It's important also to mention that in total for 2021, we're looking at over 140 projects, initiatives, and purchases, with a lot of them focusing on the repair and replacement of amenities and infrastructures within our parks and facilities. And this slide, we show it every year. It just helps with the geographic distribution of our A projects or top priority projects. A lot of these are our goals. They are renovations. And then last but not least is, as we all know very well, Wolf's Crossing Community Park, we opened some portions and amenities in October. And we plan on celebrating the ribbon cutting of this beautiful facility in May of 2021.
All right, and just as an overview of where we look with our capital balance, you can see from this graph that in 2018 is when we issued bonds to build and make Wolf's Crossing. And since that time, between 2019 and 2020, you can see the drawdown of funds for that and some other projects. As we mentioned before, the total capital budget is $10.4 million, which is comprised of $8.9 million in projects. We still have some debt certificates we pay out of the capital fund, our capital department, for $860,000. And then we also have a transfer that we have programmed out. As I mentioned earlier, 540 we are planning to use to make the rec fund whole at the end of the year, so using those reserves. And then when we talked about the refinance of our bonds, we knew we were going to be over our DSEB line for those bonds in the first couple of years, so we'll be using $150,000 from capital that will be transferring into the debt service fund. Okay, next we get to the recreation fund. It's about a $13 million budget. We have programmed it, when I say to break even in 2021, but with that break even, it means we're still, as I just mentioned, we're going to be using about $540,000 from monies that we have in our capital, I'll say reserves, to make that fund whole and to stay in compliance with our fund balance, our board's fund balance policy with that. Brad's going to get into it, but just below are all of the different divisions and other departments. There's marketing that Sam will talk about and everything else in here. Nothing has changed. This is the same as we've had in the past for our rec fund. And fund balance. What does our rec fund balance look like? Again, our policy is a range of 2 to 3 months of operating expenses. So that ranges from 2.5 million to 3.7 million. And our 2021 budget reflects an estimated ending fund balance of 3.5 million. So we are definitely close to the top end, but we are within that range also.
Okay, the bullets on this slide represent the areas within the recreation fund that comprise the recreation department. So it's the various recreation facilities as well as our 11 core program areas that we offer through the district. As we look back at 2020 actually began with winter program registration and revenue exceeding 2019. As we look back through the month of February, we were actually 13% ahead of the same time frame in 2019. So a very good start to the year. In March, as we all know, that's when the closures of facilities and cancellations of programs began. And since that time, nearly every program and facility operation has had to be modified or we have had to implement various COVID-19 participation guidelines. Our virtual offerings, which did not exist prior to 2020, began very quickly in the spring with our staff transitioning to virtual programs. And we are in the process right now of transitioning some of our in-person programs to more virtual offerings. As of the beginning of this month, we've had nearly 2,000 participants and over $77,000 in revenue in this area that, again, did not exist prior to this year. Our overall program participation right now is at 55% of what the 2019 totals were as of November 1st. Although program registration is down in a number of the program areas, several of our outdoor events that we were able to hold this year continue to see similar attendance to prior years. So a night at the movies, concerts in your park, our children's lunch hour entertainment, most recently our pumpkin smash, which actually had record attendance. Also a number of people that were still coming out for those activities. And as I mentioned in a previous board meeting, despite not opening until June, our paddleboats, kayak, and paddleboard operations also had one of the highest years on record with a 10% increase in rentals over 2019. We extended that season as far into the fall as we could, weather dependent, and next spring we plan to open as early as we can, weather dependent, to again provide that outdoor activity. Fort Hill Fitness memberships, we continue to average about 41% of what we're seeing as compared to 2019 for our monthly totals since reopening at the end of June. In our program modifications, we've talked before about modifying activities, and especially our sports leagues, our youth sports leagues, with the inability to play competitive games. Many of those transition to skill development programs. We intend to continue that as we enter into 2021, but we're also preparing ourselves that as mitigations, restrictions get lifted and we can return to competitive play, that those leagues will once again transition back to a competitive play format. For 2021, as we look at the budget for 2021 for the Recreation Department, overall programs and facilities are projected to decrease in revenue from prior years due to COVID. And I'll get into some of the bullets and the assumptions that were used for that on this slide. The contribution margin for programs is budgeted, however, within about 2% of what the 2020 budget was at 42%. When we created the 2021 budget, for each of our areas for facilities programs, we had to develop that this year through a number of assumptions. So when we look at outdoor program revenue, we budgeted that at 75% of what our participation was in 2019. Indoor was budgeted at 50%. Centennial Reach revenue, we looked at a 3-year average for the prior 3 years and utilized a 75% assumption for next year. Fort Hill Fitness memberships are budgeted at 75%. However, our Silver Sneakers, our Prime, and our Renew Active memberships, where we receive reimbursement for individuals who come within those programs and utilize the facility, that is budgeted at 45%. And the primary reason there is that is mainly comprised of senior participants, and we do expect that it's going to take longer for the senior participants to return to the facility in the numbers that we've seen previously. 25% of 2021, when we look at the Fort Hill operation, we anticipate continuing our reduced hours, closing earlier in the evenings on weekdays and on weekends, and that is very much due to the foot traffic that we see in the facility. And then as we look at our paddleboat, kayak, and paddleboard operation rental revenue, the budget for next year actually utilizes a 3-year average, utilizing the numbers that we also saw in 2020 based on the operation this year.
Okay, so looking ahead to 2021, there's several goals that the marketing department has. We've found that in light of COVID in particular, we've been fielding a lot of different questions. I guess I should say a lot of the same questions through different channels, whether it's through marketing, through social media, or it's through community relations, our info email box. So what we're going to do is put together an informational help desk webpage on our main napervilleparks.org website. And the point of that is to become a clearinghouse for residents to be able to market it as this is going to be your information source, just to help people find the proper channels to get their questions answered, as opposed to us different departments answering things in parallel. So that's something to look forward to in 2021. Additionally, we're going to be launching an all-new monthly marketing review to board and staff. Several years ago, we had a report that was very text heavy, didn't have a lot of data points. So we are looking to revamp this into something that's going to very easily show what's going on from a website perspective, social media hits, PR, how successful we are with generating different things through the media. So that's something that's also going to be forthcoming. We're going to be updating our email marketing strategy and design, and just kind of giving that an overhaul as well. Email marketing continues to be a very viable tool. We continue to add to our database as far as people that want to receive information from the Park District through email channels. So we're going to be updating that to make it more user-friendly, a lot more graphical and interesting, and provide people with the content, kind of those quick hits that they're really looking for as far as Park District information is concerned. As Eric mentioned earlier, we're going to be planning and executing the grand opening celebration for Wolf's Crossing Community Park in spring of 2021. That's something that my area will be integrally involved in planning. And then finally, as was mentioned earlier, also with the district embarking on the CAPRA renewal, marketing will be very integrally involved as far as supporting and participating in that process, reaccreditation process per the renewal requirements, and preparing the documentation for that.
All right, our Parks Department will strive to maintain district guidelines and community expectations. In 2019, our last full measuring period, Parks met 93% of our mode standards. Our mode standards, as many of you will recall, were developed to classify each park by type of use and to determine the types of maintenance required to deliver consistent high-quality standards across the entire department. We're excited to be able to finally fill 3 Park Specialist 1 openings, 1 in each division, that resulted from all of the internal movement within the department in 2020. Some of those positions had remained open since May of last year. As Sue had mentioned, a Specialist 1 position budgeted for fall of 2020 as a result of Wolf's Crossing is now deferred until 2022. As we ease into additional required maintenance at Wolf's Crossing, some activities such as those related to programmed events, splash pad maintenance, or allowing turf fields 2 seasons of growing time will be phased in, and we were able to make the decision to delay the start of the additional full-time position. Part-time wage accounts were frozen, resulting in fewer available labor hours despite new additions at Wolf's Crossing, 95th Street Community Plaza, and Knott Park improvements. Simply put, we've added more maintenance without increasing labor. And that'll lead me into the next bullet point. In 2020, there were over 300 individuals who volunteered more than 3,100 hours directly into the parks. We recently met with Director Wilson and our volunteer manager, Lynette Houle, to discuss options to further enhance opportunities and develop ideas to help fill those labor gaps. Parks expenditures were reduced from 2020, the majority of that coming from supplies and wages and benefits. Both managers and staff met and took a deep look into each account. Some line items were just reduced or deferred, while others were affected by not having the hands available to complete the task. Our second bullet point demonstrates examples of the types of tasks that are in line to be affected by the reductions. What I wanted to mention here was that staff is just not going to stop performing these types of tasks. It's the time interval between visits that will increase. Requests utilizing the 311 Parks notification system outpaced reported issues from previous years. This is directly related to the previous bullet point. Many of the comments we are receiving are regarding the types of maintenance listed just above. And then fleet capital and equipment allocation reduced by $240,000. Repair parts and overtime increased to account for vehicles and equipment expected to remain in service for longer periods of time. And overall fleet operations expenses decreased slightly from 2020. Older equipment tends to have more issues. In addition, those issues tend to get more and more costly. More issues means more time spent by fleet working on repairs, and that leads to more equipment downtime. And that affects park maintenance. So tying that back into the striving to maintain our previously established standards mentioned in the first slide, the reductions in staffing, materials, and fleet capital are going to present a challenging year for our Parks Department.
Moving on to golf. It was an extraordinary year for golf this year. Obviously, adjustments made due to the COVID-19 pandemic. As we went through the whole gamut of being shut down all the way up to overwhelming demand for this summer. Kind of recapping this year, we started out with a stay-at-home order that closed our golf courses for 6 weeks in March and April. Obviously, with the courses closed, we looked to reduce costs as much as possible. Labor was reduced to essential full-time staff only. Purchases were deferred and capital projects were moved back. Once we got to May, the courses were reopened, but we had significant restrictions to deal with. We had twosomes only, 15-minute intervals. No driving range was available, and on-course food service only. With those reduced revenues, golf could not rehire our part-time employees. We had to look for ways to reduce our expenses again. We were able to enlist the assistance of our customer service staff, HR, and finance personnel, and they helped staff our golf shops and our food service areas, making sure that we could continue to provide golf for our patrons while keeping our costs low. And then out on the golf course, our golf maintenance staff, we were limited to just our full-time staff and our 9-month employees. And we just moved everything back to essential maintenance only. Once we got to May 29, we were able to almost fully open the golf as we moved into phase 3 and 4. We were once again allowed foursomes, intervals were reduced, and carts were available again. The driving range was reopened, and eventually we did have sit-down food service again. And then our programs, lessons, and everything else started again on June 15th. So what happened once we got into the summer? Well, rounds jumped dramatically. You can look at this comparing 2020 versus 2019. Last year, the June through October period, our rounds increased more than 30%. Driving range jumped up 52%. And the food and beverage operations, our revenues in there increased 30%. Overall rounds and revenues for golf, we are projecting for 2020 to finish ahead of budget. This is something that 6 months ago just didn't seem feasible. We were shut down or under such heavy restrictions. And this question is asked to me quite often, why did we have so much demand this year? And the simply golf in demand or golf in 2020, provided a perfect outlet for people just looking for opportunities for recreation, an opportunity to be outside for exercise. And I think a big key is able to be outside and socializing, able to come out and play golf with friends or family. That opportunity was not really available for a lot of people this year. This slide kind of illustrates what our rounds looked like this year. You can see in the spring, especially in April, we had 0 for rounds as we were shut down. And once we got into May, those numbers were coming back, but still a lot lower than previous years. But then the summer months hit and we were able to open up in phase 3 and 4, and the golf rounds jumped dramatically. Right now, we're estimating for 2020 to finish almost with 77,000 rounds, which is about a 10,000 round jump compared to last year and previous years. Looking ahead to 21, we want to build on these successes we had this year. We are currently exploring a new point of sale system and website options with the goal to improve how we connect with our golfers. Obviously, this year we had a lot of new golfers. We had a lot of returning golfers, that people that hadn't been playing for a while that are coming back. So we want to be able to market to this expanded customer database that we have. E-commerce is going to be big, especially now, unfortunately, with the changes that we are going through. We've had great success with our e-commerce program, and we are going to be starting that up here this week with a rollout later this week with our holiday specials. We mentioned this before. Sue had mentioned that we're going to have to adjust some of our fees to kind of compensate for the increased labor costs that we are going to experience this year, mainly due to the $1 increase in minimum wage. The majority of our pro shop staff and a lot of our golf maintenance staff are minimum wage employees. So this will impact our labor costs this year. We will see a small increase in the fees for our Brooks Links membership program. However, we're going to look to keep that program membership levels at the same as 2020. We want to have daily fee golf available, and if we increased our membership program too much, we feel that will impact, especially with the prime time, with the memberships taking away the prime time play. 18-hole green fees and range fees are both increasing by $1 this year. And we are looking to also have a single rider cart fee for 21. This is new this year, based off of the changes under the pandemic. A lot of people are looking to ride solo. We're going to have to pass some of those additional costs on to the users as we've had more single riders using carts, fuel, and the extra labor that's involved with those. And then finally, our concession area, we'll have some price increases there, mainly to compensate for labor and cost of goods as those increase. Finally, we'll be looking forward to starting up some of our master plan upgrades for 21. Mainly the Naperville practice area renovation, which will begin in August. This was a deferred project from 2020. And also the drainage installation at Springbrook Golf Course, which originally was planned for most of 21 to be shut down, but we have phased out this project to minimize the impact on the golf for the next few years.
All right, well, that concludes our presentation. Just kind of doing a quick wrap up as we look back, as we were putting this budget together. A couple things I think is a common theme you've heard throughout this, and that is being flexible, being nimble, having reserves to get us through this year, and to really important, as Ray had talked about, is to carry on our mission and to do it in a way that is not going to impact our services for years to come, because we have been conservative, and we continue to do so with that. So flexibility is the key as we speak today, and as we get through next year, I'm sure we'll be bringing you updates once we learn more of what is going to be happening. Before we get into questions, next step for actually the budget process is we will be bringing you the tax levy ordinance and the budget and appropriation ordinance for approval at the April 10th meeting for your consideration. I'm sorry, did I say April? April. So possible that you're listening. That was good. Sorry, everyone, in December, at our December 10th meeting. So with that, we'll open it up for questions.
Thank you.
Sue, if I can just jump in for 1 second.
So if I, I'm sorry.
No, Mike, if I can just jump in for a second.
Yeah.
Two things. This last slide here about Glenn. Samara Luthman has done just a phenomenal job of capturing Glenn's life. And it will be going inside the budget book this year to commemorate and remember certainly a friend to a lot of us, but certainly a close friend to me, and a man who just lived and breathed Park District and Naperville Park District. So that's the first thing. The second thing, I just want to reiterate, Sue had spoken early on in the presentation that there were no anticipated merit increases. There are no merit increases. I just want to make sure that that's clearer for the record. There will be no merit increases this year. And with that, I'll turn it over to you, Mike.
Okay, we want to go around and get questions and comments from commissioners. I think it's important to be able to have the presentation on the screen. So what I'll do is I'll go around and call on each commissioner in sequence. And since we all have the presentation available to us, if you're referring a question to a particular slide, if you could give the number of the slide, that would be helpful. So with that, let's start off with Vice President King.
I have no questions. With being on the finance committee and seeing what's happening with the budget and everything that I've been fine-tuned of what's happened with the reduction of staff. I just want to congratulate the staff and everyone that put this together on their hard work, their thoughtfulness about reduction, and just the overall professionalism that we've seen this year and the years in the past, and I know going in the future as well too. So I have no questions. I just a comment and say great job to the staff.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Bobby Carlson.
Yeah, this is my second or third time through this, so I don't really have any questions, but that haven't been answered really. But I think that this year obviously was the hardest that anyone could anticipate, and I think everybody did a great job making it work as best they can.
Thank you. Bill Egan.
I have a question, and then, well, it's a question / statement. I assume Dirk's there. I can't tell on my little screen here.
No, Dirk is not here.
Okay. Do we have a legal in the room?
Yes, Scott Puma.
Oh, good, Scott. I'm going to put you on the spot. Welcome to the group. First, Ray stated here just a second ago that there'll be no merit increases this year. So why budget it? Should we be using those resources to benefit, low-income folks that can't get to our programs? It's the same argument that we've had for years. We budgeted 4% raises previously, but we never used all the money. Well, then where's the money going? We need to be putting our resources that we're expecting to get towards things that are going to provide value. And, with the uncertainty of COVID-19 and some issues, people have money. Am I going to have a job? We're going into a shutdown. If I'm a restaurant worker, am I going to get paid? Those people live in our community and certainly could use some of that support. 0.2%, I acknowledge, is probably not a whole bunch of money, but if it's a difference between my kid making a program or not, shift the money to where it's most needed. With that said, Scott, correct me if I'm wrong, this is more towards the levy, but the tax sale process. If I don't pay my taxes this year, I understand that they go for sale and there's a bidding process where people bid an interest rate and then pay the county, and the county distributes those funds. And then I'm on the hook for the interest that was bid on for that tax sale year. And that continues, I think, for 3 years. And after 3 years of my taxes being sold, if the bank doesn't step in and buy them to protect the mortgage, my home could be then taken over through a legal process for not paying. But essentially, all the government entities are made whole throughout every year by that process, assuming somebody's willing to buy those taxes. So, educational, correct me if I'm wrong. But I think that's something everybody needs to be aware of here.
You are correct. That is the process that it goes through, the taxing bodies receive the full amount of the tax bill. So that's correct.
Was there a follow-up question, Bill?
President
Sorry,
Riley,
I'm good.
can I just clarify, just so everyone's under the understanding?
Certainly.
We did not budget for any merit increase. We budgeted 2.3% as a COLA, and the 0.2, which is maybe $2,000 or $3,000 at most, was just in case we went up to 2.5. That was just in case we had to make a one-off adjustment to a single position. And we usually have maybe, this year we didn't have any. In the past, we might have had 1 or 2 or 3 where we're talking, you know, it's a couple $100 here or there in an adjustment to get someone within a range. I just want to make that clear that we did not budget for any merit. All we budgeted was a COLA for full-time regular employees.
Thank you. Bill, anything else?
Save my comments earlier about not joining IAPD. I think that's a waste of money given that salary.
Commissioner Janner.
Thank you, President Riley. Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of us on the board and on our senior staff, you know, kind of pride ourselves in being fiscally conservative and, you know, just in listening to this presentation and reading through it, I mean, I definitely think it demonstrates a belt tightening, so to speak, and a, you know, very fiscally conservative and responsible approach, everything from the abatement to the lack of merit increases, you know, up and down the ways to do more with less, sort of a common theme. So, you know, I'll join Vice President King in commending the staff for together, and you know, I think this is better budget presentations that I've seen. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Commissioner McBroom.
Somebody needs to be over there.
Yeah, there's noise coming through. Somebody. Yeah, echo a lot of the same comments. What an unbelievable year. Stressful. I think everyone did as good as they possibly could have done throughout this whole ordeal, and hopefully we will see the end of it sometime soon. But no, great job, everyone. As far as the you know, my job is really just to vote for and against the levy and the budget. And I realize I'm not always going to get everything that I want. And but I think that you know, the abatement and capping the I guess the raise pool, or not including the merit increases, I think are you know, taxpayer friendly items. And so I will be, like I said at the last meeting, I'll be supporting the levy and the budget. Just a couple, you know, follow-up questions. I do want to, regarding Commissioner Egan's comments on the IAPD. What are our dues and what do we get out of being a member, and what will we lose by not being a member? And then I have another question after that, but that's my first question.
This is who I can speak to. The dues are about $6,000 a year.
Okay. And what do we get? I really don't know.
Yeah, Sue, let me jump in for a second. Can you guys hear me?
I can hear you, Ray.
Yeah, Josh. So basically, they are our advocate in Springfield. So it's almost like our lobbyist, if you will, in Springfield. So yeah, Commissioner Egan brings up a good point. There was a lot of controversy with this gentleman's salary. I'm not going to get into personally what I believe, because that's not my spot. But that being said, they certainly are an advocate for us and for all park districts in the state of Illinois. So that's what we pay the $6,000 for.
Okay.
And just for a point of clarification, a couple of years ago when this came up, the driving issue with our pulling out of IAPD for a year was the pension liability for Peter Murphy. And we worked with Senator Mike Connolly on that, and there was some legislation passed as a result of that review. So we did have some impact there. Anything else, Josh?
Yeah, one other question. This is just, I saw the, I know, Sue, you can't comment on what school districts, how they're levying, but I saw the press release, and maybe NCTV has it wrong. And, they're looking for, they comment in the press release that if the levy is abated, the tax bill would still go up by CPI. And how is that different from what we're doing? I mean, my understanding is we're keeping the tax levy flat. That the dollars are not going to increase, and there would be no CPI adjustment. Do I have that right?
You have that correct. What we're going to do in December is we're going to levy CPI and levy for new construction, and then abate down in February to what our extension was this past year, which is a known dollar amount. So our ask is going to be the same as last year.
Okay, I thought so. So the school district must be structuring their levy differently, or the press release is wrong, or?
There's lots of different options you can do for a levy, and different ways of either abating, not abating, freezing. So ours is one way that we're doing it. So other taxing bodies can do different things.
Okay, that's all I had. Thank you.
Okay, and last but not least, Commissioner Todd.
I think the staff has done a phenomenal job this past year managing through this COVID, and I think it makes a lot of sense and very pragmatic in terms of the presentation that we had today. We know that COVID's going to continue on through 2021 somewhat, and I think we're taking the right stance in this whole thing. So my compliments to the staff in terms of what we've been presented today.
Thank you. I'll just make a couple of quick comments. Again, thank you very much for the presentation tonight. As we're certainly used to, it's well thought out, clear, it's well presented, and it seems like a very viable plan going forward. 2020, you had a good plan going into the year, and then all hell broke loose, and you had to make things up literally on a day-by-day basis. And I think that with all those challenges, I think we fulfilled our responsibility to the residents. So again, a thank you to staff. Any closing comments or further questions or anything from anyone?
Mike?
Yeah.
Just a tag along or kind of follow up with Josh, just so that I'm not misunderstanding. While there's an abatement going to happen and it'll effectively be the same levy 2 years in a row, the way staff has chosen to do this, and the commissioners are, at least based on the comments I've seen here tonight, are going to support, is that's a one-time thing that you're effectively, the compounding is protected. So next year, being 2022, that the levy can not only take up the $500,000 or $500 some thousand this year, but the $500,000 plus the compounding effect of that money. So while it certainly is a give this year, I can't argue that point, that it is not a permanent abatement. Therefore, the taxpayers' bills are still in jeopardy, albeit 2 years from now or 5 years from now, whatever the board down the line would do.
Thank you. Any other comments? Thanks again, Ray and Sue and everyone involved. Next item on our agenda is our next scheduled meeting, which is a regular meeting of the Board of Park Commissioners, December 10th, 2020, 7 p.m., hosted remotely from the Admin Building Boardroom. Next on our agenda is executive session.
Move to adjourn to executive session to discuss personnel under section 2C1 of the Open Meetings Act.
Is there a second?
Aye.
Bridget, will you take the roll, please?
Vice President King,
Yes.
Commissioner Egan,
Aye.
Commissioner Carlson,
Yes.
Commissioner Jagger,
Yes.
Commissioner McBroom,
Yes.
Commissioner Todd,
Yes.
President Riley.
Yes. You know, we'll wait for our technological change here.